The wind howled across the Spanish highlands, rattling the shutters of Valdecra's castle like the cry of a wounded beast. Rain lashed the stone walls, torrents spilling from the sky as if the heavens themselves had broken apart. Within the great hall, candles flickered weakly, their flames shivering in defiance against the storm's roar. The Duke of Valdecras stood by the window, a tall, solitary figure draped in dark velvet. His name was Don Rafael de Valdecras, 40 years old and yet untouched by the intimacy of flesh. To the outside world, he was a man of unyielding discipline, a recluse who had chosen the sanctity of his castle over the temptations of courtly pleasures. But within, beneath his stern gaze and measured silence, burned a loneliness so sharp it had become part of his very soul. He had sworn long ago, after betrayal and scandal in his youth, that no woman would claim him. His lands, his title, his honor, these were his shield. He would remain untouched, a virgin duke, until death itself broke the vow. But fate, cruel and relentless, arrived that night with the storm. Through the sheets of rain, the duke's eyes caught the blur of movement at the gates. A riderless horse galloped past, reins trailing in the mud, and moments later came the frantic pounding upon the iron doors of the castle. Servants rushed to answer, dragging open the gates against the wind.
There she was.
A woman collapsed at the threshold, her gown torn by the storm, her dark hair plastered against pale cheeks. She clutched a bundle against her chest, a satchel soaked through, and her lips trembled as she gasped for air. The Duke descended the stairs, every step echoing through the silent hall. When she lifted her head, her eyes, deep, desperate, and burning with secrets, met his. "My lord," she whispered, voice broken by cold. "I beg refuge."
He could have turned her away. He should have.
But something in her gaze pierced through the armor he had built across decades of solitude. He gave the slightest nod.
"Bring her in," he commanded.
His voice was quiet, yet it carried through the hall like steel. They carried her inside, laying her near the hearth as flames struggled to warm the room. The Duke stood above her, arms crossed, as if daring himself not to care. Yet his eyes betrayed him. They lingered too long upon the curve of her lips, the way her soaked gown clung to her trembling form. The storm raged on outside, but within those walls, another storm had begun. Silent, forbidden, and inevitable. She told him her name was Isabella Marquez, though even as she spoke it, her voice faltered, as if hiding something. She claimed to be fleeing brigands who had set upon the road. But the Duke, trained in the art of silence, heard the unspoken truths between her words. "Rest," he said, his tone sharper than he intended. "This castle is not a place for lies. If you remain, you will speak truth to me. Until then, you are safe." Her gaze met his again, fire flickering within it. "And if the truth itself is dangerous, my lord?" The Duke turned from her, his jaw tightening. He did not answer. But deep inside, something within him already knew, this woman had not entered his castle by chance. And she would not leave without tearing apart the vow he had lived by all his life. The storm did not pass in a single night. For days, the sky wept upon the mountains, and the castle became their prison. Isabella remained within the Duke's halls, her presence stirring whispers among the servants. She moved with grace, though her gowns were worn and her satchel remained locked, never once opened in their sight. The Duke watched her from a distance, every glance a battle between suspicion and desire. He dined alone as he always had, until one evening the echo of her voice carried across the hall. She stood at the far end, hesitant yet defiant. "My lord," she said softly, "a woman cannot eat among shadows forever. Permit me to join you."
His fork stilled.
No one had dared breach his solitude in years. His servants lowered their eyes, awaiting his fury. But when he looked at her, he saw not defiance, but loneliness mirroring his own.
"Sit," he said at last.
Their dinners became a ritual. Night after night, the Duke and Isabella sat across from one another, speaking little, but with every silence deepening the unspoken bond between them. She laughed sometimes, sudden and warm, and he found himself listening for it, craving it. Her laughter filled the empty chambers of the castle as if they had been built only to carry her voice. And still, her secret lingered. One evening, he confronted her. "You are not what you claim to be." She froze, her hand trembling upon her cup. "And what do I claim, my lord?" "A woman of misfortune, lost upon the road. Yet your speech betrays refinement. Your hands are not the hands of a peasant. And that satchel, what does it hold that you guard it so closely?" Her eyes darkened. For a long moment, the fire crackled between them. Then she whispered, "If I tell you, you may cast me out into the storm that still rages beyond your gates." "Then tell me nothing," he replied, his voice rougher than intended. "But understand, every secret draws you deeper into peril within these walls." She leaned forward, her eyes burning into his. And yet, I feel safer here than anywhere I have ever been.
The Duke's breath caught.
No woman had ever spoken to him so. No woman had ever dared.
That night, sleep evaded him.
He wandered the halls until he found himself before her chamber door. His hand hovered, trembling, before he withdrew. He cursed himself for weakness, for the fire she lit within him, a fire he had sworn would never burn. But fate is merciless. On the third night, he found her in the library, candlelight gilding her face as she read from a leather-bound volume. She did not hear him enter. Her lips moved, whispering verses of forbidden poetry, words of desire, of longing, of love unfulfilled.
He stepped closer.
Those words, they are not fit for a woman alone.
She startled, turning to him.
The candlelight caught her eyes, wet with unshed tears. And yet, they are the only words that have ever understood me. The air between them thickened, heavy with all that was unspoken.
He should have left. He should have turned away.
But the silence drew them closer, until his hand brushed hers upon the table. Her breath shivered. His vow, his fortress of restraint, cracked in that single touch. "My lord," she whispered, "you look upon me as if I were forbidden."
And perhaps I am.
But tell me, would you rather die untouched than live knowing you had tasted life, if only once?
The words shattered him.
His lips found hers with a desperation he had buried for decades. The kiss was rough at first, the clash of storm and fire, then softened into something trembling, reverent, as if he feared she might vanish should he dare to claim her fully. The Duke of Valdecroz, virgin until that night, surrendered his vow in the silence of the library, while thunder shook the skies beyond the castle walls. And when dawn came, he knew there was no turning back. For the woman who had undone him carried secrets vast enough to destroy them both. The storm passed, leaving the land drenched and gleaming beneath a pale sun. But within the castle, another storm brewed. Servants had begun to whisper. They saw the way the Duke's eyes followed Isabella, the way she lingered near his side as though she belonged there. And in the eyes of the world, such closeness was not merely scandal, it was ruin. One morning, the Duke summoned her. He stood by the hearth, his back rigid, his face shadowed.
"You must tell me the truth," he said.
His voice was firm, though it shook beneath the weight of fear. "Who are you truly?" She held his gaze for a long moment, then reached for her satchel. Slowly she opened it, revealing not gold nor trinkets, but letters, sealed with the crest of Castile. "I am no wanderer, my lord," she confessed. "I am the betrothed of another. Promised by my family to a powerful man I do not love. A man who would see me chained to him for power, not for affection. I fled the marriage. These letters, they are proof of the alliance he seeks through me. Proof that could destroy him, should they fall into the wrong hands."
The Duke's chest tightened.
Betrayal and desire warred within him. She had deceived him, and yet, had she not also saved him? She had given him the only taste of passion his life had ever known. "Do you know what you have done?" he whispered. "Yes," she said, her eyes glistening. "I have condemned us both." He should have cast her out, delivered her to her betrothed, preserved his honor. But love, once awakened, cannot be slain so easily. Instead, he drew her into his arms, his lips against her hair. "Then let us be condemned together." But fate had no mercy. By dusk, riders approached the castle gates, bearing the crest of the man who claimed her. Soldiers, relentless and armed, demanding her return. The Duke stood at the battlements, his heart pounding with a fire he had never known. He turned to her, standing beside him, fear and defiance in her eyes. "Isabella," he said, his voice breaking, "if they take you, I will be nothing. But if I fight for you, I will lose everything." Her hand found his. "Then lose everything. For love is nothing if not worth the ruin it brings." The soldiers stormed the gates. Steel clashed, torches blazed, and in the chaos, the Duke fought with the fury of a man who had found something greater than life itself. By dawn, the castle lay battered, the soldiers driven back, but at a cost. The Duke stood bloodied, the weight of victory pressing like chains upon his shoulders. He turned to Isabella, who wept at the sight of him. "You cannot stay," he told her. "If you remain, they will come again. Stronger. And next time, they will not fail." Her sobs broke the silence. "And what of us? What of what we shared?" His hand cupped her cheek, trembling. "What we shared will live in me until my last breath. But love, my beloved, is sometimes too dangerous for this world." They kissed once more, desperate, lingering, as if trying to carve eternity into a single moment. Then he watched her depart through the gates, her figure fading into the horizon. The Duke of Valdecroz returned to his empty halls, no longer a virgin, no longer untouched, but forever bound by the memory of the woman in the storm. And in Spain, whispers spread. Whispers of the virgin duke who had broken his vow for love forbidden, love eternal, love lost.